Hello, Nope Coach Fam Bam. Welcome to episode 78. I'm your host, Suzanne Kohlberg. Today's topic I'm excited for, finding your voice with the fabulous Margaret. So, where do we start with this? Before we get into it, I just encourage everyone listening, think of a place where you haven't spoken up for yourself, where you've wanted to say something, you've wanted to contribute, or maybe you've wanted to disagree is a hard word, but your opinion has been different to the opinion of people who are speaking at the time. And what did it feel like to sit on that? Like, if something comes to mind straight away, chances are it's been ruminating in the back of your mind. And then sometimes we come up with these most amazing comebacks. Next time, if only. But then the moment happens, and once again, we find ourselves pausing or overthinking. So I'm really looking forward to getting into this topic with Margaret today. So Margaret, where do you want to start with this, with finding your voice?
Well, it is such a broad topic, isn't it? And it can be so many different applications. I just want to touch on what you just hit on. I don't know how about you, but I've had lots of practice conversations with trees or in my car as I'm driving along. If they say this to me, this is what I'm going to say. And then the moment happens, or it takes you by surprise and you're struck dumb. And you've got nothing to say.
I haven't prepared for this. Like, this iteration did not even enter my awareness.
And then, or you're just not brave enough, and you want to keep, if you're like me, you want to keep the peace. And then hours later, maybe in the middle of the night, you've gone, that's the zinger that I could have done. And there's always the fear too, especially depending on the context. If it's in a work situation, is this going to taint my reputation for future opportunities, or am I going to be seen in a certain light, a certain way? So we do tend to tamp down our real selves and our authentic selves. And the work I've done with your sweet self has really taught me that you can have your voice and not be aggressive and not cause drama where drama isn't needed. You know, if you are someone like me who is a peacemaker, peacekeeper, you want to have an opportunity to have a voice and not cause drama is a conflict sometimes.
Yes, and I'm just going to interrupt you there because I think this is such a point. Like, when we're identified as a peacekeeper, my invitation or my question is, when you stay silent to keep the peace, we can often start a war within ourselves. So are we really, truly being our peacekeeper selves if we are not at peace? I'm not saying, stuff everybody, let's just go whatever. And, I'm thinking, do you watch Bridgerton, Margaret?
I have.
Lady Danbury with her cane? Like, she totally give no fucks about anyone. I'm not saying you have to go and whack everybody with your cane, figuratively. But there's kind of like, if I'm not saying this thing to peace keep, but I'm not at peace, am I really keeping the peace, or am I starting a war internally, which often results in us somehow numbing, overeating, over drinking, over shopping, and then we spend all this time, money and effort trying to fix ourselves from this behavior, when often speaking up is part of the antidote.
And actually, there's a lot of ways of speaking up without even using your voice. Sometimes speaking up is withdrawing. Sometimes speaking up. I was just thinking when you were talking about that quote from Brené Brown that you quote quite a lot, that choosing discomfort over
resentment.
Resentment. And when I talk about being a peacemaker, the thing I've learned over the last few years is that in being a peacemaker, I have chosen other people's peace over my own. So being a peacemaker is also about choosing my peace, over the situation. For example, this I'm saving money for a move, and I actually had some fraudulent activity on my account this week, which was fun. But a friend of mine who is a salon person had a special on, and I just thought, you know what? I am going to go and get myself a back massage and a facial. and she only had 2 spots. I made it happen, and I was laying there yesterday while she was massaging my arms, and I was feeling like Cleopatra with all the
Yes.
and I just thought, you know what, I am worth this. I feel completely loved. I'm in a space where I'm working crazy hours right now, and it was just that self-care. It doesn't have to be that, and it's rarely that for me, spending that kind of money on myself or even taking that amount of time for myself, but it was just glorious in that moment.
I
And
love that.
choosing what's going to keep your peace sometimes can be about keeping your mouth shut.
Well, another example of that would be keeping your mouth shut, because it's a great example. Say you're somewhere and they're asking for volunteers, and nominally you'd be the first one to put your hand up or stand up or whatever. And there's that discomfort as the eyes start to turn towards you, or somebody might nudge you with a shoulder or cough, and they're waiting for you to go, yeah, I'll do it. And you don't. That's a way where you're finding your voice and keeping the peace without actually saying anything, because you're not jumping in. And then someone may, in that case, volunteer you. Go, oh, Margaret, or oh, Suzanne, would you? And in the moment, you have to say, I'm not available this time, or not at this moment, or, you know, something like that. So you will have to speak up. But, you know, sometimes there's assumed that we will do things, and it's like, no, not right now, or maybe not ever, or maybe I'm not the best fit. But letting that silence hang there, or letting someone else to go, actually, this is someone else's job at this time, can be really uncomfortable.
And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. I was in that same position at the beginning of the year. One of our leaders at church had stepped aside. There was nobody to do it. I offered to do it on a short-term basis. And the short term was dragging on and on and on. And here we are 6 months down, and I'm still there. But I had said to the leader, right, I am going to Europe in April. When I get back in May, by the end of May, there needs to be somebody in place. Now, there wasn't, but there was an interim somebody. And I've identified somebody that I can now train up to take it over. But sometimes you have to sort of say to yourself, okay, well, I have capacity to do it for a short period. It's not
and then giving it a timeline. I love the timeline with things too, because sometimes someone says, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to meet up every week and go to the gym? Do you want to meet up every week and watch a training and do some journaling? I don't know, whatever the thing is. And you say yes, because at the time you do want to do the thing. But then it keeps going. And sometimes it reaches a point you don't want to do it anymore.
No.
Potentially they don't want to do it anymore. Nobody wants to be the one who speaks up and says, actually, and when someone finally does, there's usually this collective sigh of relief.
Yeah.
So even when you go to do something, setting a time frame, let's do this for 6 months, let's do this for 3 months, and renegotiate, or then re-meet up then and extended it, so it doesn't end up being this kind of awkward, never-ending like thing that never reaches a conclusion.
That's true. That's really true. And on the other side of it, a lot of people that I speak to are actually on the other side, where they're dealing with somebody, managing or just in relationship with somebody who doesn't know how to say no. And they don't know how to manage that, because that person is putting their hand up all the time, but they're wanting to give opportunity to other people, or it's not in that person's wheelhouse. And so it's actually causing more stress for them, and they're not thriving and they're not enjoying it, and yet feel obliged and can't not say anything. So they very often, I talk with leaders, especially inexperienced leaders, in how to manage those different personalities and how to manage the different dynamics with people saying yes to things that they need to be saying no to, and not saying yes to the things that they need to be saying yes to, like the things that are actually naturally in their skill set, or they have a gifting that needs to be developed, or is a next step in towards their dreams. You know what I'm saying? So it is a two-way street, not only saying yes to things, but also saying yes to the right things.
And also it can be managing, negotiating that. What came to mind when you were using that example for me is school, like a classroom, and there's always that kid, pick me, like the Hermione, whose hand is always up. And the teacher's kind of like, can anyone else raise their hand? You don't want to downplay or make the person who is volunteering feel that they are not wanted or seen or heard, but you also want to encourage others to maybe come out of their shell, or step up in a place where they haven't felt comfortable to before. Any tips, suggestions for people, managing those kind of situations?
Yeah, look, a friend of mine, he has a saying. He says he helps people find their natural rhythm. And that's what we're trying to do. From an emotional intelligence point of view, you really want to give somebody a task that's going to be in their flow. I had a guy who I managed in England who was cranky pants. He was an older guy. All my team actually were older. I was the young Australian who had no idea what she was doing. And he always carried a cloud with him. And so wherever he was, influenced the whole atmosphere. And so I decided to work with him and gave him a project that he had no interest in doing, but I thought that he would really fly with, and he did. And he did so well with it that they made him my replacement when I left, even though he wasn't the next in line or anything like that. And that's not on me. I guess partly in identifying what people are naturally good at, and a lot of that is around personality knowledge. A lot of that is around understanding how they work. There's a really great free tool called 16 personalities, and you can, as a team, you can do it, and it has images about how you communicate and how you argue and how you are happy and how you are when you're stressed. And we used to have, in one job, we had all of those images on our desks. So if you were dealing with someone who was in your team and they weren't themselves, you could have a look at that little image and go, okay, this is how you are when you're stressed, or this is, that kind of thing. So the tips I would have for an inexperienced or young manager is get to know your people. Number one, you're managing the holistic person as not just a worker, but as a person is absolute paramount to getting the most out of them. I always say, when you invest in your people, your bottom line takes care of itself. No matter whether
100%.
it's a volunteer organization or it's a corporate organization or whatever the situation is. When you make people the priority and actually pay attention to how they are when they're well and when they're in a good space, to notice how they are when they're not in a good space, and to be able to say to them, what's going on. And that's invaluable to a member. My boss said to me yesterday, you're really flying in this area, and this area, not so much what's going on. And so that's the fact that she even noticed it wasn't a stick, it wasn't any of that kind of stuff, but she's like, you're really thriving here, but this is a gap. What can we do to support you in this gap?
I love that. What can we do? Not how can you pull your socks up and whatever.
Yeah.
Like the community aspect of it. I love that so much. So Margaret, for the listeners, let them know what you do and where they can find you so they can get more Margaret goodness in their lives.
So I do a number of things. The main thing I do is work with young or inexperienced managers or people who are wanting to manage upwards. I help them to manage people holistically. I'm all about ethical people management, and I'm a quality improvement coach as well. So I'll coach and mentor people through their people stuff, really, or the quality improvement stuff. They can find me, I'm just starting, so they can find me at maradapq@gmail.com. And there'll
Can you please spell that?
Of course, MIRADAPQ@gmail.com. And there will be a Facebook page as well.
By the same name?
Same name, that's correct. And the PQ stands for People and Quality, and that's who I am.
I love it. Thank you so much for joining me, Margaret. It's been fabulous. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.